You are Locked On Wolves POSTCAST, part of Locked On Minnesota on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Ants last-second game-tying three. It rims out. T-Wolves fall to Boston tonight. Final score, 118-115. What's going on? Back in the lab, back at it. Another T-Wolves POSTCAST episode right here on the Locked On Sports Minnesota Network. Your team every day. Jack Borman with me as always. Give him a follow at grborman13. Jack, lots to get into from tonight, including it was a three-point slugfest by both teams tonight, plus another quiet night for Ant in the box score, all things considering. But first, quick reminder, tonight's episode brought to us by Game Time. Game Time, download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. All right, so you always like to text me before the game, which I really appreciate, by the way. Tonight's text, I just want to pull it up. Let's see what tonight's text read before the game. No Jaylen Brown or Porzingis tonight. Should be a win with a solid performance. Well, I mean, there was some good takeaways. There was some solid performances. But despite crawling all the way back, they were 14 down at one point, 13 down at halftime. Wolves had a great third quarter, which we'll get into to cut it close, having a chance to tie it with 3 seconds left. Anthony Edwards' three ball, it comes up short. So the T-Wolves drop, but you know, I will say this was a very entertaining game on TNT, no less. So in front of a national audience, Kevin Harlan, if he's not the favorite, he's in like my top three when it comes to play-by-play guys for the national broadcast. But T-Wolves dropped this one, 17-16 on the year, 96 three-point shots attempted tonight combined. Celtics, 22 for 57. Wolves, 21 for 39. Julius, 27 points. He led the team. 20 for Naz. 19 for Jaden, which was fantastic to watch. But, you know, I mean, Jason Tatum was an absolute machine, per usual. Derek White is just wildly annoying to play against. Just start with your biggest takeaways, Jack. Kind of your A topics from this one, first and foremost.
Yeah, first and foremost, just an awesome basketball game. Again, another game where, you know, even though the Wolves lost, it was just a ton of fun to, you know, to have a seat in Target Center tonight and be able to take in a really entertaining back and forth game that was kind of fun to watch the two teams throw punches at each other, you know, metaphorically speaking. And the biggest battle coming into this game was unquestionably the 3-point line. Both of these teams are in the top three in the league in terms of the percentage of their total points that come from beyond the arc, while both being excellent 3-point defenses. They are great at kind of winning that 3-point math equation of consistently taking more threes than your opponent. Both teams are in the top 5 and their opponent shooting the fewest amount of threes per game. And that certainly did not happen in this game. They got out fast and furious with the 3-pointers. The Wolves' first 7 field goals attempted were all 3-pointers. They started 4 of 7. While Boston, I think 7 of their first 9 were 3. So they were 1 of 7 from the floor.
Hilarious. The first quarter was hilarious, man. The first 7 minutes was hilarious. Yeah,
I think I have it written down in the first quarter. In the first 10 minutes, Boston's 16 of their first 19 shots were threes, and 11 of the Wolves' first 16 shots were threes. So 27 of the first 35 shots in the in the first 10 minutes were threes, which is kind of crazy coming into this game. And final tally, the Wolves end up, you know, shooting an outrageous number for three. They were 21 of 39 from three, 54%. But Boston made one more three, 22 of their 57 shots from beyond the arc, 39%, which is still a great number for a Celtics team that has been struggling to knock down the three of late. And have kind of been dealing with some 3-point variance of late. That's why they're 5-5 in their last 10 games after starting, I think, 19-4. Obviously, some injuries are mixed into that as well. But you know, it was just kind of a crazy night for the Wolves. And then, you know, when the 3-ball wasn't falling for guys like Sam Hauser, Al Horford, or Derek White, or Drew Holiday, then Jason Tatum was just torching this team in isolation, particularly in that third quarter. He had 16 of his 33 points in the third quarter, had 0 turnovers while he was going on that just force a switch, get a bucket type of run that was really impressive to watch. And the Timberwolves, just aren't super great at sending a second guy to an opposing star player because they're so used to, whether it be Jaden McDaniels, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, or Anthony Edwards, even Dante DiVincenzo or Naz Reid, guarding those guys on an island and doing a good job of it, that they don't normally need to send a second guy. So a lot of times when the Wolves did send a second guy, whether it be to Tatum or Derek White or someone else, the Celtics did a great job of just making a simple pass that a lot of times resulted in an easy bucket right underneath the hoop, whether it be for Nehemias Queta or or a cutter, or whomever it may be. And I mean, to hold Jason Tatum 6 of 17 from three is a pretty good mark, considering how many 3-point shots he was really getting them up. But 7 of 10 from two, and a lot of those twos were pretty tough isolation scores in the mid range. There wasn't a whole lot at the rim for Jason Tatum. So you got to tip your cap to him. I know it pains a lot of people to admit it, but Jason Tatum's a pretty darn good basketball player when he's got a guy on an island, and he did an excellent job. The players around him did an excellent job of forcing switches to get McDaniels off of him, to get Randall on him. And in the first half, they got Mike Conley switched onto him a decent amount. Also did that in the third quarter as well. So the Celtics just went matchup hunting when the 3-point shot wasn't falling, and Tatum did a great job carrying the load at kind of the point of the game where the Celtics 3-point shooting really took a nosedive. And the other big one for me is just the turnovers, right? Timberwolves had 16 turnovers. Celtics only had 4 turnovers. Coming into this game, the Timberwolves were 23rd in the league, so 8th worst in the league in turnover percentage. So the percentage of turnover, or percentage of possessions that end in a turnover. They had 16 turnovers, I believe, on their 85 possessions tonight. And it was like 19% turnover percentage there, which would be worst in the league for, if you extrapolated that, to a team number over the course of a season. And the Celtics scored 22 points off of those turnovers. Meanwhile, the Wolves just score 4 points off of Boston's turnovers. Even though the Timberwolves shot 54% from three, it's pretty tough to win a game in the NBA when you lose that points off turnover differential by 18 points. And the Wolves coming into this game 26th in points off turnover differential, so the amount of points off turnovers they score subtracted by the points off turnovers their opponents score. They were minus 5.8 in the last 5 games, and they've gotten absolutely destroyed by OKC in the last game. And in Boston tonight. And it was a big reason why the Celtics won on that huge run, won the third quarter, I believe 34-16. It was just very similar to that OKC game, and that you had one really bad quarter that kind of soured what was really a good performance in the rest of the game. And it was just unfortunate that hole that they dug in that one quarter just proved to be a little too much, and certainly doesn't help when Anthony Edwards has just 15 points on 15 shots. So another subpar game from Ant. We'll get into it a little bit more here moving on, but
just real quick, just to tack onto the turnover topic, 22 points to 4 points off those turnovers that you mentioned. That's a huge discrepancy. Not to mention Boston had 18 more shots attempted as well. So, I mean, you look at the turnovers and it's like, okay, a lot of those just came from those turnovers specifically right there alone. But maybe you said this already. I might have missed it. Where is this Wolves team as far as the turnovers go, just amongst the rest of the league? Because it does feel like when you sit down and watch them night after night, it has been one of the biggest things holding them back from any type of like real consistency, possession to possession, but also game to game as well.
Yeah, no question about it. I don't love looking at raw turnover numbers across the league just as much, because some teams like to play really fast. The Timberwolves are, bottom 10 in the league in pace, bottom 5 in the league in pace. So, that's why I like looking at turnover percentage a little bit better.
Got
the Wolves are 24th this season in turnover percentage. So about 16% of their possessions end in a turnover. And for the Timberwolves, it's just unfortunate because you're a team that has played at a considerably slower pace these last 3 seasons as you've leaned into defense really being your identity. And when you lean into defense being your identity, you play at a slower pace. There's just so much less of a margin for error offensively when you do have all those turnovers, because inherently you're just not going to have as many possessions where you can make up for it. And to the Timberwolves' credit, they have done a very good job this season in forcing opponent turnovers. They're fifth in opponent turnover percentage, about 16%. But despite that, they're sixth in opponent turnover percentage, but they're just 19th in points off turnovers. And so the fact that they can't couple forcing turnovers with scoring off of those turnovers is just a bit of a bummer, considering that it feels like when the Wolves turn it over, most of those turnovers are live ball turnovers that result in points going the other way. So again, like you said, great call out that the Celtics had 18 more shot attempts than the Wolves. They've done a great job of winning in that, the overall total shot battle, as has Oklahoma City and Houston, who are also, two teams that are right up there near the top of the leaderboard. So, it's just becoming imperative for the Timberwolves to take care of the ball, and they had some stretches where they did that really well. We'll get to that in the next segment, but a bummer that it feels like that's why they've lost a lot of these games. Until they figure it out, it'll be
just steals alone tonight. 9 steals for Boston to T-Wolves 1. It's such an advantage there in a 3-point game and a 1-possession game. Unfortunately, even just one of those might have been the difference between a win and a loss. Again, it's such a tight game. Plenty more deep dive for this one. I want to talk a little bit more about the third quarter ball movement that sparked that 11-2 run, got the Wolves back into this one. That's all coming up right after this. Quick reminder, tonight's episode brought to us by FanDuel. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook and official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Right now, FanDuel is giving you a chance at a huge return. $250 in bonus bets guaranteed when you win your first $5 wager. When you get the hunch in the middle of the game, you go check out the latest stats. You can view live play-by-play and so much more, all on the same page where you place your bets. Again, $250 in bonus bets guaranteed when you win your first $5 wager. Go check it all out over at FanDuel.com. Get in on some NBA future action while you're there. Anthony Edwards, MVP odds, now sitting at 20-1. It's all sitting up over at FanDuel.com. Again, check it all out over at FanDuel.com and get $250 in bonus bets guaranteed when you win your first $5 wager. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook and official sportsbook partner of the NBA. All right, one of the reasons the Wolves were able to erase that lead in the third quarter, again, they were down 13 at halftime. They come out, they had an 8-0 run. They finished with another 11-2 run. Well, one, just like we were talking about, they didn't have any turnovers. So imagine that. Good things happen when they're not turning the ball over. But what else did you specifically see, though, in that third quarter? Because it just felt like, to the human eye, that was some of the better, more efficient ball the Wolves have put together this year. I'll just say that. So what did they do, and what do they maybe need to continue to accomplish more consistently on a bigger scale, specifically when you watch that third quarter?
Yeah, and Anthony Edwards had 0 points and took one shot attempt in that third quarter, but was a key reason why the offense was as efficient as it was. The Celtics were playing a trapping 2-3 zone where they were trapping Ant with the top 2 guys in the zone, and they actually had Drew Holiday as the bottom middleman in the 2-3 zone guarding Rudy Gobert, and was a key reason why Gobert didn't play in the fourth quarter, was because he just couldn't do a whole lot offensively, and it's harder to screen against a zone and for Rudy to go screen up top and help Ant get any type of runway against that zone, because the rest of the 4 guys can just collapse into the paint and force Ant to get rid of the ball. But what Ant did really, really well was he dragged the defense further away from the basket and brought 2 to the basketball, and then did an excellent job of kind of using his dribble to create passing lanes and thus creating wide open 3-point shots for, guys like Naz Reid, Dante DiVincenzo, Jade McDaniels, and Julius Randle, which was awesome. I didn't think that Ant forced it at all in the third quarter. It was exactly what he did in the playoffs last season, where he needed a couple minutes to just kind of figure out, like, all right, this is a defense that you're throwing at me. All right, this is what my response is going to be. I'm going to take what you're giving me. I'm going to play, clean, efficient basketball and just make smart decisions and make the right read, and not just necessarily need to force my imprint on the game as a scorer. And he had 4 assists and 0 turnovers in that third quarter, despite the Celtics having a ton of length and speed and strength out there, and the five guys that they were playing that trapping 2-3 zone with. So for the Wolves in the first 8 minutes of that quarter, when the Celtics were pretty much employing that defense, they had 20 points on 8 of 16 shooting and 0 turnovers in the first 8 minutes of that quarter, and did a great job of of just kind of keeping pace with a Celtics offense that was just, I mean, that was when Tatum was just going nuts. And so sometimes, like, if that's happening, you just got to find a way to stay in it. And most of the times the Timberwolves find a way to stay in it with defense, but you have to give credit to their offense. And guys like Julius Randle and Jaden McDaniels did a great job of playing behind the pressure that the Celtics were putting on Anthony Edwards. And they did not do a good enough job of that against Oklahoma City on New Year's Eve. And they did a great job of it tonight in the first quarter and in the third quarter. Those two guys were absolutely tremendous. And again, in the third quarter, those two combined for 18 of the 34 points, 6 of 10 shooting, 3 of 6 from 3, and they made all 3 of their free throws. And again, like, I just think that the Celtics 3-point shooting creates a razor thin margin for error. And like, they needed that just to stay with the Celtics because of how well Tatum was scoring it and they were shooting it. It's kind of almost like a final boss fight of a video game,
right?
Where you feel like you're doing everything right. You've rehearsed, you've kind of rehearsed what you need to do. You know what you need to do at each step of the way. And then you make that one mistake and boom, all of a sudden it's a quick 7-0 run. And instead of a 2-point game, it's now a 9-point game. And you just are fighting this uphill battle. And then that's kind of what happened, right? That's kind of what happened in the middle of that third quarter. And then Chris Finch goes to the old reliable lineup now that we're seeing to bridge the first and second and third and fourth quarters with Dante, Josh Minott, who was tremendous tonight, Julius Randle, and Naz Reid. And those guys were a plus 13 in a little bit more than 5 minutes playing together, bridging that third and fourth quarter. And I thought that Josh Minott is kind of within earshot of Naz Reid territory, where just every single thing that he does provides energy to his teammates, and the crowd just goes absolutely bananas for. And he had that huge dunk on Derek White, which got everybody in the stands.
Maybe the dunk of the night. Night.
Oh, totally the dunk of the night. That Rudy one that Rudy had off the offensive rebound was certainly great. But I think what that Minott dunk did for the crowd and got everybody going. And then, Dante DiVincenzo, I think, ties up Sam Hauser, kind of with the two of those guys rolling around on each other at the middle of the floor. And they have this jump ball at the center circle. And before Dante could even get off the ground, I think every single person in Target Center was off of their feet, cheering super loud. It kind of took you back to last season a little bit, where this is a blue collar crowd at Target Center. They appreciate guys that do all the dirty work, that work extremely hard, play really hard. And they're going to live with missed shots, no question about it. But if you aren't making up for it by diving on the floor or flying around playing defense, good luck trying to endear yourself to this fan base. And I think Dante DiVincenzo, after kind of a rough introduction with all of his shooting, the way that he then almost forced another tie-up that resulted in a foul on him, I actually thought that was the right call, even though a lot of fans might disagree with me. But it was still great hustle. And then when Keita had that wide open alley-oop, he flies out of nowhere from the weak side to break up that pass.
Yeah.
And then, and then Minott has the huge block on Derek White. So he had the dunk over Derek White, then comes back and has the block on Derek White. And that results in Dante DiVincenzo's second straight 3 of the game to help, I think, at that point, tie the game. I don't have it in front of me exactly.
While you're looking that up, Josh Minott, second best plus minus on the team tonight with a +7, 7 points in 11 minutes. Yeah, he was absolutely fantastic. Real quick, just on this topic, I see a lot of Mike Conley questions right in the chat. 19 minutes, 5 points, 2 for 4 from the floor. Stan Van Gundy had an interesting stat. Did you know Mike Conley, within 2-point shots, so take out the 3-point ball, he's 4 of his last 28 from 2-point shot. And you even saw it again. He's not hitting that running floater as much this year that used to be automatic. DiVincenzo or Josh Minott or maybe a third guy that I'm not maybe mentioning right now, should somebody be soaking up even more Mike Conley minutes as the season goes on? Or where does Conley kind of fit into the big picture equation in your point of view?
Yeah, I think for Conley, the biggest thing for me is his 3-point shooting. I don't necessarily. I mean, obviously, it's not great. His 2-point shooting. His 2-point shooting wasn't great last season, and the Wolves struggled a little bit when teams really forced him to play below the arc, and couldn't get to that 2-point shot quite as much. But yeah, certainly it's a problem, and I think for him, he doesn't really have that stop and pop 2-point shot in the pick and roll game with with Gobert. And what's a bummer is, you see guys like Nickeil Alexander-Walker has added that kind of stop, going left, dribble move, pull up jumper from like the elbow that he's added in that Gobert pick and roll. Mike just hasn't really had that. And floaters are generally a tougher shot than a standard mid-range jump shot and have a lower expected points per shot, just looking around the league. And so I think a lot of those misses from Mike have been, those offhanded righty floaters that, he's been pretty good at relative to the rest of the league. But just in terms of all the other shots that the Timberwolves offense could take, it's certainly not necessarily what you want. And I think the important thing for Mike Conley too is just that the Timberwolves don't try to overuse him. And I think we might get a stretch here once Rob Dillingham is back and the schedule lightens up a little bit, that we might see Mike sit a couple of games, because we're already getting to the point now where, pretty consistently over the last 2 weeks or so, Dante DiVincenzo has certainly been outpacing Mike Conley in minutes.
He's heating up.
And Nickeil Alexander-Walker has kind of been dead even with Mike Conley in minutes. Instead of Mike pushing, high 20s, about 30 minutes per game, he's really been down closer to 20. And those 10 points or those 10 minutes a game have almost directly gone to Dante DiVincenzo. So that's just kind of something to monitor. And again, that was a key reason why the Wolves went out and got Monte Morris at the deadline last year, is because they didn't want to have to play Mike Conley too many minutes down the stretch of the season. And they just didn't end up resting him as much as, as much as they wanted to. And then Mike obviously hurts his calf on the last play of that, I think it was game 3 or game 4 against Phoenix. And so you just don't want to get into a situation where you're, overly reliant upon Mike and then, you overuse him. So I think it's a good thing that, maybe they're kind of trying to find some other options right now. And yeah, I mean, that comment nails it right there too. So I think that's certainly contributing to the lack of Gobert's effectiveness offensively, and why, Mike Conley didn't play a single minute in the fourth quarter tonight, and Rudy Gobert didn't play a single minute in the fourth quarter tonight either. And I can't think of that ever happening since the two of those guys have been on the Timberwolves and have both been active for a game. So
that was wild. That there was a couple times I had to do it, not a double, a triple take. And I'm like, are neither of them still back out there? This is crazy. But at the same time, it's like this is when the Wolves were playing their best, most scrappiest ball too. Nothing against either of those two guys, but it seemed to be working at certain junctures during that ball game. A couple minutes left. I want to talk to you basically about Ant's night, just a little bit more in depth. I just want to pick your brain a little bit about Ant. And then we got to talk about this Pistons game coming up this Saturday. That's all coming up right after this. Quick reminder, tonight's episode also brought to us by BetterHelp. When your schedule is packed with work projects and more, it's so easy to start to let your priorities start to slip, even when we know what makes us happy. But when you feel like you got no time for yourself, non-negotiables like therapy, they're more important than ever. If you've been thinking about starting therapy, it's time to give BetterHelp a try. Entirely online and designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited for your schedule. So simple. All you got to do, you fill out a brief questionnaire, you get matched up with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Never skip therapy day with BetterHelp. Go visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon. You're getting 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Okay, I do want to ask you about this Pistons matchup coming up this Saturday, but just real quick, 60 seconds or less, just Ant, what did you see from him tonight? What are you seeing big picture? I noticed when he shot it was just like a 13-foot jumper, 6 and change left in the fourth quarter. I realized those were his first 2 points of the entire second half, so quiet. But as you mentioned, they were getting some good offensive production despite his, box score scouting would tell you, I guess, tomorrow morning when you look at the paper. So just Ant, I guess, and what you're seeing with some of these new rotations as well.
Yeah, I think it's impossible to talk about Ant without talking about Julius Randle too. I think that kind
Right.
of goes hand in hand. I think in the second half, Ant obviously was phenomenal as a playmaker in that third quarter and helped get everyone else going, and it was really good. And you obviously would have liked to see more from him in the fourth quarter. Got some open looks, just wasn't able to knock enough of them down. I thought obviously blew that layup. I don't know why he didn't dunk that. That seemed problematic to me. That's normally a time when Ant would dunk that. I just think that
Nas had a capable dunk there as well that kind of he tried to float it in there, just popped right out too. That was a bummer as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the biggest thing for Ant is just he was so used to just being passive in that first quarter that, it was a situation where it was kind of nice for him to be able to play OKC and then play Boston right after, because the teams kind of uses similar defense and just like showing two to him, build a wall, forcing the pass and others to play beyond it. But the problem I thought in the first quarter was that Randle did so much of the, scoring and the playmaking. And he was great. He made 2 threes in the first couple of minutes, created 2 other threes off the drive in the first few minutes. But the back half of the first quarter, I just thought that kind of dominated the ball a little bit too much and was taking some tough mid-range shots and not making the same passes that he was making earlier in the quarter. And it kind of was hard for everyone else to get going beyond or kind of outside of that, especially once Jaden McDaniels left the game. And so I think when you have a guy that's just kind of dominating the ball, not really using, the isolation to create for others like he was at earlier points in the game, it's just kind of harder for guys to get into a rhythm. And I think Randle's isolation can certainly be a weapon, both as a scorer for himself and as a creator for his teammates. And we saw both of that in this game. But it can also be a bit of a problem. And I thought that was part of the reason why this team didn't get going quite as much in the second quarter. And that kind of includes Ant too. I think when that first lineup of Na, DiVincenzo, Minot, Randle and Reed kind of struggles to get going and struggles to kind of play with a flow and a rhythm that Ant can then kind of come back into when the ball's kind of popping around and he can really be successful like he was in the second quarter against Oklahoma City when he had like 11 in a row. That's great. I just thought that sometimes the downstream effects of Randle being on the ball a little bit too much kind of hampered things in the second quarter. And so I thought that contributed to it. But I thought more in the fourth quarter, it didn't really have anything to do with Randle. It just had to do with, Ant not being able to finish and make the good shots that he did find for himself. So I think for Ant, again, his 3-point shooting numbers have dipped quite a bit in the last couple of weeks. So that's certainly got to be a focus for him. I know he was out here earlier today taking a ton of shots, before anyone else even really got to the arena. So he's certainly taken note of that and certainly trying to rectify that himself. But overall, I thought Julius Randle did a very good job tonight. He had 27 points, 7 assists, and was certainly the Timberwolves' most consistent playmaker throughout the game. I think it's just the more that you can Julius can kind of realize, okay, I've had 2 or 3 isolations in a row that haven't gone well. Now I need to get rid of the ball and maybe go back to being a spot up 3-point shooter. The more quickly he can kind of realize that, maybe pick his spots a little bit more about when to ISO versus when to not, only when he's got a good matchup, or if the Timberwolves can force a switch like Boston was doing and he can get a smaller guy on him. He's tremendous. He's tremendous at taking advantage of those mismatches. So I think that is certainly something that he's got to kind of focus on a little bit moving forward. But thought it was probably one of, if not the best Julius Randle game we've seen so far. And I thought he recovered really nicely from a really tough kind of late first, early second quarter. And that was really the first slippage that we've seen from that 5-man lineup. And the first 3 mistakes that group really made, they gave up 2 offensive rebounds to Keita and Horford. And then Randle had that turnover on the other end. And all 3 of those mistakes led to Sam Hauser threes in the early part of the second quarter. And that's kind of what it goes back to it, like the boss fight. It's like you stack a couple of mistakes, it's just tough to make up for it. And then I just really liked, and we talked about Conley a little bit, that here was where I was going to talk about that. But I love that Josh Minot's continuing to get more minutes. I think he probably would have been closer to 15, 16 minutes instead of 11 if Jaden McDaniels wasn't having one of his best games of the season. And you got to give Jaden some love. He was 4 of 8 from 3, knocked down, a good number of his open threes. And he continues to be just a beast on the glass on both ends. I think if you look at his rebounding numbers, October, November, December, it was like 3 in October. It was up to almost 5 in November. And then in December, I think he was up near 6.5 rebounds a game while shooting almost 40% from 3. So that's exactly what you want from Jaden. He's trending in the right direction. Hopefully he can kind of continue to build some of these stack some of these games where he's playing really confident basketball and help the Timberwolves kind of survive this stretch of Ant struggling to score. And it's certainly big when you can get, 48, when you can get, 80 points from Randall, McDaniels, Reed, and DiVincenzo. You'll certainly take that.
Yeah,
it's just a bummer that everyone else couldn't kind of push it further north than 115 points.
Hey, just real quick, what's a guy like Derek White's trade value, huh? That guy is pesky, man.
He's awesome.
Eastern Conference team, don't see the Celtics more than once or twice a year. Obviously, we saw in the last 2 years some great matchups we've seen, but Derek White, dude, 26 points, 5 for 10 from 3, 2 blocks, couple assists, couple rebounds, but just a menace, man. Just pesky.
I think he's the best role player in the NBA.
Oh my God. And they were saying, I don't think he was a all-star last year. It sounds like he's on pace to finally be an all-star is what they were saying on the broadcast anyways. And basically that he was criminally undervalued. But this year, finally, at least from an all-star point of view, he should get some recognition that he deserves. So, hey, Wolves got a lot of depth. Can we what's up? Can we get that guy over on our side? I feel like we need some of that. He's just a glue guy, man. Just a hustle glue guy that just does all the little things well, I feel like.
And you can scale him up or down as much as you want. Man. And he plays perfectly as, the number 2 scorer like he did tonight. And he plays perfectly as like the number 4 scorer once Brown and Porzingis are back. So
coach's dream, dude.
It's one of the best trades of the last maybe 20 years is Romeo Langford in the first for Derek White was
unbelievable.
Crazy.
2 minutes left, maybe a little less, but Wolves Pistons coming up this Saturday. I know you got in your notes Jaden Ivey, former 5th overall pick. He's out, broken fibula. That was 2 drafts ago. Cade Cunningham, number 1 overall pick from 3 years ago. Sounds like he's been a stud this year. But yeah, 2 minutes or less. Just give us the scouting report. What's the deep dive? What do we need to know about this Pistons team and this matchup specifically with the Wolves?
Yeah, no question about it. I feel like it's our 2 loves going against each other, the Pistons and the Wolves this year, because Wolves fans are rooting for the Pistons to be in the playoffs so that the Wolves get the Pistons first round pick.
That's right.
Plus we got
a Detroit Minnesota battle going on Sunday as well. You might have heard of Vikes Lions going on as well. So.
The prelude, man, we love it. I didn't even think of that. That's great. Oh, I love it. Yeah. Let's get on
maybe a little prelude. Yeah, we'll see what this
Saturday, Sunday, and
we'll see how this game turns out, man. Maybe a little prelude. Yeah.
Yeah, it was just a bummer for anyone that was watching that game last night. Jaden Ivey broke his fibula, his shin bone. Had to get stretchered off the court, air casted. So that was a total bummer because he and Cade Cunningham have been awesome as a backcourt so far this season. Now that they've got JB Bickerstaff in there. Those 2 guys have really been unleashed and they've just spread the floor with pick and roll and have found shooters on the perimeter. And Malik Beasley has been awesome there. It's been a lot of fun to kind of watch his renaissance with the Bucks and now at the Pistons. So the Wolves also have to do a really good job of boxing out and protecting the glass. And they've done that really well the last couple of weeks, and they've got to continue to do that because Detroit's one of the more active teams in terms of hitting the offensive glass between Jalen Duren and Isaiah Stewart are 2 really, really strong and just guys who have seemingly endless motors on the offensive glass. So got to do a really good job there closing out, forcing this team to play below the 3-point line because they are a team that can certainly get hot and kill from 3. So I think the more you can force them to play on that short mid-range, long mid-range area, I think the Wolves will be in a good spot if they can prevent guys like Cade and Malik Beasley from combining for 7, 8, 9, 10 threes, I think. And they rebound the ball. I think they should be in a good spot, but just a bummer that the Pistons lose a guy like Jaden Ivey, because he's been really fun to watch, and is certainly a guy that over the last couple of seasons when he's played the Wolves has put together some really solid performances, because he's one of those guys that kind of has the nitro gear that he can get into and really cause problems for the Timberwolves perimeter defense that is traditionally struggled a little bit more with really fast and quick guards like we've seen with De'Aaron Fox already this season. So should be a very favorable matchup, and should be a good opportunity for the Timberwolves to hopefully start off a 2-0 weekend for the boys in Detroit.
Love that. We'll end there. Ants game tying 3 at the buzzer. Rims out. Wolves lose a tight one. Final score versus the Celtics, 118-115. Wolves drop to 17-16 on the year. Hey, as always, huge shout out to all the everydayers out there that always make us your first listen. All you guys coming in the chat every night, game to game, venting with us, sometimes celebrating after a win. Make sure you make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. And go follow Jack, too, on X at Borman13. He's live from the Target Center during almost every home game. Again, Pistons up next this Saturday night, 6 p.m. tip-off. We'll catch you right here, same time, same place. But until then, signing out.